would like to begin by asking you to clap your hands if you've ever even thought of learning something new. Well, let me tell you this. If you had the perfect conditions and environment, you could learn just about anything possible, maybe even beyond that. Now, I know many of you might disagree, but think about it. 0 procrastination, 0 distractions, 0 angry teachers that tell you to do your homework so many times you find their voices echoing in your heads out of nowhere. Is that just me? Now, to anyone who has or will try to learn something, there might come that moment where you have devoted hours to learning this one thing, and you realize, wow, I'm getting absolutely nowhere. An incredibly profound realization, isn't it? But this realization has the power to squash even the biggest hopes for learning a skill, causing us to question whether we ever really wanted to do this, whether it all just might be a waste of time. Later on, either you're blessed with a eureka moment at some arbitrary time where suddenly you gain all the knowledge you were lacking in the shower, or you potentially suffer through the process and even give up. As much as I empathize with you all, and as much as I'd be a hypocrite to ask this, I'll ask it anyway. Why did you give up? Why were you stuck in the first place? And many people give me this answer. It's not my thing, or a more straightforward, it's really hard, boring, and a waste of time. I believe that anybody can learn a skill, whether you have the thing for it or not. Let's take Knowledge Bowl, for example. To give you all some context, Knowledge Bowl is a quiz competition with 2 teams that have buzzers and have to buzz in to answer each question. The team which buzzes first gets the chance to answer. If they answer right, that's extra points. If they answer wrong, the other team gets the chance to answer. Naturally, the team with the most points wins. I was fairly familiar with maths and sciences, as well as some ancient history and geography, so this wasn't too out of my realm of expertise. And I was right. Not to blow my own horn, I was amazing. I was so proud of myself. I was able to answer so many questions, and turns out I really did have a thing for Knowledge Bowl. And that was a lie. I sucked a lot. The questions were either really obscure history questions. For example, this set of laws which segregated Black Americans in the earlier 20th century were named after which figure? If you can answer that question, congratulations. Or the questions were easy enough to answer, but they started off really obscure, and they got less obscure as they went on. But of course I didn't catch the hint, because either A, I wasn't listening, or I was too stressed and I was too afraid to buzz. What shocked me, however, literally made me drop out of my seat, was that there was this girl in grade 10 who was in Knowledge Bowl too. And she answered about 90% of all the questions. I kid you not, she answered about 90% of all the questions, including the one I just asked. She answered so many questions that I was convinced she must have been eating textbooks 3 times a day for her entire life in order to gain all that knowledge. I mean, of course, that's not a plausible answer. So I asked her, how did you learn all of this information? And she told me quizzes helped her a lot. However, another important thing to develop was the intuition, the courage to buzz, even when you don't think the answer is right. Just to take that chance to get the points for your team. The way to develop that intuition? Practicing Knowledge Bowl games. After playing Knowledge Bowl games for about 6 months, I realized I started making connections in my head, such as if the question asks about a rich North African king that devalued gold, the answer is most likely Mansa Musa. Other questions as such. And I also realized that I answered the most questions and I learned the most in actual Knowledge Bowl competitions, where stakes were high, my heart was beating in my chest really fast, and my hands were over the space button just to press the buzz. I realized those are the best conditions for me to learn new information, because I have points to lose if I don't get the answer right. But people also learn by reading books, by watching crash course videos on YouTube, or by listening to TED Talks like this one. I just found the right technique for me. But not all things are things you wanted to learn in the first place. I would like a show of hands if you've ever learned a skill that you didn't want to learn. Well, then you'll find the scenario sort of relatable. When I was 5, my mom enrolled me in piano lessons. At 5, I didn't even know what a piano was, let alone that I needed to learn this new alienish thing. When the piano teacher came and she stared into my soul, I knew I was done for. I knew I was dead. The first lesson was all right, but she told me to practice do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do about 50 times. And guess what? I didn't do it. I didn't practice. And then when she came again the next week, she looked into my eyes and told me, "You didn't practice this, did you?" And I was just like, Then she grabbed my hand and then made me play do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, and then do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, about 50 times. So many times that tears had started coming out of my eyes because of how much my arms cramped. It's kind of like if leg day was yesterday and your quads are like cramping like crazy. That's what was happening to both of my hands. And I was 5. Internally, I was screaming at my mother, "Why did you make me learn piano? What was your good idea here?" It was only after a few months that I noticed something very weird happening. I was finally able to play the scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. But also, every time I heard music, I noticed something strange. I noticed that it had manifested as a taste and texture in my mouth. The music, I could taste it. It was a really weird realization, and it was so weird that I fell out of my seat. I was like, "What?" And of course, I kept it to myself because it's weird. Like, you don't just taste music out of nowhere. But what I also realized was that different keys had different tastes, different notes had different tastes, different instruments had different tastes. And I decided to use this taste to my advantage. And this helped me learn keys way faster than I ever could have if I didn't find this connection between taste and sound. And fast forward to today, music is my life, or about half of it. And I would be nothing without music. But the interesting thing is, if my mom hadn't made me learn piano, I would never have found this connection, and I never would have been as passionate about music as I am today. Thank you, Mom. Now, I want you to think, what is learning? How does our mind learn? Essentially, at its core, learning is building connections and integrating new experiences into our current day lives. The more connections you make, the deeper that understanding goes. And what I realized through these experiences, I've said realize a ton of times now, is that in order for me to learn most effectively, I had to let my mind wander free and let it make weird and interesting connections. Because I was willing to take that chance that one of those weird and really illogical connections would skyrocket my learning. And it did in piano's case. But why don't we let ourselves learn? Like, why don't we make these connections? Why aren't we skyrocketing our learning now? Well, partly it's just us. It's just us as humans. And negative experiences define us. And negative experiences force us to limit ourselves so that we prevent this negative experience from happening again. But on top of that, society limits us too. In school, we have curriculums, a way or an order of learning things, and we have schedules. But once you're in real life, there are no curriculums. There are no schedules. You are in charge of your own learning. And I know that a lot of people will feel unprepared because at school often, in most schools, we're not allowed to take charge of our own learning or find our own ways to learn. And what's more, society penalizes us if we fail at absolutely anything. You get a bad grade? Why'd you get the bad grade? You failed that job interview. Why'd you fail that job interview? If you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, some people will be like, oh. So you see, we have to limit ourselves in order to be socially accepted and not fail. But this limiting is also what makes us less effective learners. Because when we view something with a certain lens, we are unable to see the other connections that could possibly be formed. And therefore, we limit the amount of connections, which limits our understanding of a certain topic. I would like to leave you all today with something I've heard quite a while back. There are more things we know we don't know than the amount of things we truly know. But there are also a limitless amount of things we don't know. Let your mind explore these unknowns in ways so far unknown to you, and experience for yourself the power of the limitless possibilities out there, the power of the limitless opportunities to learn, and please disregard that person's voice who's echoing in your head. Thank you.